On the 7th of April, 2024, a 15-year-old girl pulled a fish out of a flooded creek in Clermont County, Ohio, that weighed 101 pounds. It came out of a slow backwater off the Ohio River, the kind of brown, unremarkable water people drive over on a bridge without ever once looking down. The fish was longer than she was tall. It measured 56.5 inches, nearly 5 feet, and it was 39.5 inches around, thick as a man's chest. The biologists who looked at it guessed it was close to 30 years old, which means it had been down there, in that river, since before she was born. She put it back. Here's the part that should stop you. That river, within living memory, was one of the most poisoned stretches of water in the country. And the Ohio record before her stood at 96 pounds. And the record before that one was smaller still. The blue catfish in the Ohio are not simply hanging on, they are getting bigger. Year over year, decade over decade, the fish that come up out of that water keep setting a higher ceiling than the last. And the people who have spent their whole career studying this river cannot fully tell you why. To understand how strange that is, you have to know what a blue catfish actually is, and you have to know what the Ohio River used to be. The blue catfish, Ictalurus furcatus, is the largest catfish native to North America. Not introduced. Not stocked in from somewhere else. Native. It belongs to the Mississippi and the Missouri and the Ohio the way the water itself does, and it was swimming these channels long before the river had a shipping lane or a single dam across it. A typical adult in Ohio runs 30 to 40 inches and 20 to 40 pounds. That is already a large animal, but the species does not have a fixed adult size the way you do. It keeps growing as long as it keeps living, and it can live a very long time. 20 years is ordinary for a big one. 30 is not out of the question. The truly enormous ones can push past 60 inches and clear 100 pounds, and there is real reason to think we have not yet seen how big or how old they are capable of getting. They are bottom animals. They hold in the deep channels, in the swift current, in the dark, and they hunt by feel and by smell more than by sight. Most of your life on that river you spend directly above them without any idea they are there. You swim in the summer, you launch a boat, you cross the bridge on your way to work, and underneath you, in water you cannot see into, something the size of a person is holding steady against the current, older than your marriage, waiting. Now, the river. By the 1930s, the Ohio was an open sewer. In Cincinnati alone, an estimated 350 million tons of untreated waste went into the water every year. Before the states finally acted, less than 1% of the sewage along the river received any treatment at all. The water ran low on oxygen. Fish died off in whole stretches. This was not a wild river with some pollution in it. For long reaches, it was closer to a drain that happened to have fish in it, and fewer of them every year. Then, in 1948, the 8 states along the river formed a commission, or Sanco, to deal with pollution that would not respect a state line. And in 1972, the Clean Water Act arrived with real teeth. Within 18 years of the commission's founding, the share of sewage getting treatment went from under 1% to 99%. Slowly, over decades, the oxygen came back, the water cleared, and the life returned. Today, the Ohio holds more than 160 species of fish and better than 45 species of freshwater mussel. So for a long time, this was the whole story, and it was a good one. The river got clean, and the fish came back, and some of them got big. Case closed. If you asked why the Ohio was suddenly giving up 100-pound catfish, the answer was obvious, and it was comforting. We poisoned the river, we stopped, and nature did what nature does. Recovery. A happy ending you could put on a poster in a visitor center. That explanation held for the better part of a generation. And it is not wrong exactly. It is just no longer enough. If this is the kind of thing you find yourself thinking about, quietly, the next time you cross a river, then consider subscribing. It is the simplest way to have the next one of these turn up when it is ready. Here is where the clean story starts to come apart. Recovery explains why the fish are there. A cleaner river holds more life than a poisoned one. Nobody disputes that. But recovery does not explain the shape of what is happening now, because the fish are not just present, they are climbing. Look at the record itself over time. The Indiana state record blue catfish, caught right there in the Ohio River, was 104 pounds. That was set back in 1999. Then in Ohio, the record was 96 pounds, set in 2009 on the same river. Then in 2024, that 15-year-old broke it with 101. Downstream in West Virginia, the state length record for the species fell in 2022, and then fell again in 2024, when an angler pulled a fish just under 51 inches out of a pool in the Ohio. That was the 9th record fish West Virginia certified in a single year. Not the 9th catfish, the 9th record. You do not get a curve like that from a river simply returning to health. A recovered river reaches a new normal and levels off. What people are describing on the Ohio is a line that keeps bending upward, one enormous fish after another, each one seeming to raise the bar for what is possible. And when you ask the biologists why, the honest ones will tell you they have several ideas and no single proof. There is no controlled experiment on a river this size. There is only the water and what keeps coming out of it and a set of possibilities. None of them as comforting as the recovery story they are quietly replacing. There are 3 of them worth sitting with. Take them in order. The first is about food, and it is not a happy answer. Sometime in the 1970s, a group of fish, now known as Asian carp, escaped from aquaculture ponds in the southern United States, where they had been brought in to eat algae. They got into the river system, and they never left. Silver carp and bighead carp spread up through the Mississippi, the Missouri, the Illinois, the Tennessee, and into the Ohio. They are filter feeders, and they are relentless. A single one can eat up to 1/5 of its own body weight in plankton in a day, and they breed in numbers that are hard to describe to someone who has not seen a river boil with them. For most native fish, the carp were a disaster. They strip out the base of the food web, the plankton that the small fish depend on, and the small fish are what everything larger eats. So the carp took food out of the mouths of the natives, and the natives declined, but not all of them. The blue catfish is one of the very few animals in that river large enough to turn the invasion around and eat it. Researchers in Illinois, working a backwater of the upper Mississippi, opened up 68 blue catfish and looked at what was inside them. The single most important food by weight was not shad. It was not the small native prey these fish had eaten for 10,000 years. It was adult silver carp, whole ones. The catfish had learned to eat the thing that was starving everything else. Sit with what that means for the Ohio, a river that just received an almost unlimited new supply of high-calorie food, and one native predator big enough to exploit it, and willing to. The catfish that figure it out are not eating scraps. They are eating a fish that can run past 2 feet long, and there is a great deal of it. If that is what is driving the size, then the giants coming up out of the Ohio are not a sign that the river is well. They are a sign that something went badly wrong upstream, and that the catfish are the one creature getting rich off the wound. The second possibility is stranger, because it means we did it on purpose without meaning to. The Ohio you picture, a flowing river, is mostly not that anymore. Along its length, a chain of locks and dams holds the water back into a series of long, deep, slow pools. The record fish do not come from some untouched wild stretch. They come from named pools behind named dams. That 101-pound fish came out of the Markland Pool. The West Virginia record came from the RC Bird Pool. These are engineered stretches of slack water, deep and slow and warm, backed up for scores of miles behind a wall of concrete. And it turns out that is close to a perfect factory for a giant catfish. When Orsanko's biologists sampled the same lock chambers on this river across more than 4 decades, one of the clearest changes they found was a steady rise in the fish that eat other fish. The dams had slowed the river down, made it lake-like, and the deep still pools favored exactly the kind of big, patient predator that a blue catfish is. We built these pools to move barges. We were thinking about coal and grain and shipping. We were not thinking about catfish, but we handed them still, deep, warm water to grow old in, and they took it. So the second answer is quieter and colder than the first. The monsters in the Ohio may not be wild river fish at all, in the old sense. They may be, in part, a thing we manufactured by accident in the process of turning a river into a shipping channel. The third possibility is the simplest, and in some ways the most unsettling, because it suggests we are only now seeing what was always possible. Maybe nothing about the fish has changed. Maybe we just stopped killing them long enough for the old ones to appear. Remember what these animals are. They grow their whole lives, and their whole lives can be 30 years or more. A 100-pound fish is not a normal fish. It is an old fish, a rare survivor that dodged every net and every hook and every bad season for decades. For most of the 20th century, the river was too poisoned to grow one, and the ones that survived were often taken and eaten. But the water has been clean now for a generation, and the culture around these fish has shifted. That 15-year-old girl did not keep her 100-pound catfish. She insisted on putting it back, because at that size it was almost certainly a breeder worth more in the river than on a wall. All along the Ohio, the biggest fish are increasingly being released to swim off and keep growing, which raises a question nobody can answer. If the fish keeps growing as long as it lives, and we have finally given it a clean river and stopped taking the giants out, then how big does one get in 40 years? In 50? The world record for the species, 143 pounds, was not caught in the Ohio at all. It came out of a reservoir in Virginia in 2011, and the fish died at the scale before it could be weighed and released. So we have a number for how big the species can get. What we do not have is any reason to believe the Ohio has reached it. The oldest, largest fish in that river right now may simply be the first ones we have allowed to live long enough to show us, and the ones behind them are still down there, still eating, still growing. Here's the honest position, the one the agencies will actually stand behind. It is probably not any one of these. It is probably all three at once. A cleaner river, plus an accidental chain of deep warm pools, plus a flood of new food, plus a fish that never stops growing and is finally being allowed to get old. Each one alone is not enough to explain the curve. Together they might be, but nobody has untangled them. Nobody can tell you how much of that 101-pound fish was clean water, and how much was carp, and how much was concrete, and how much was simply time. The ages are estimates. The causes are educated guesses. On a river this large, running through 8 states, there is no way to run the experiment that would give you a clean answer. There is only the water and the fish that keep coming out of it a little larger than the year before. I would be curious where you are watching this from, and whether you have ever seen one of these fish come up out of a river near you. Because the honest truth is that the people living closest to the biggest ones are usually the last to believe how big they are. So think back to that flooded creek in Clermont County, and the girl, and the 100-pound fish you decided to let go. Picture the moment after the photographs. The fish is eased back into the brown water off the Markland Pool. For a second it just hangs there, stunned, a shape the length of a person suspended in water you cannot see through. Then it rights itself, and with one slow push of that forked tail, it is gone, back down into the channel, back into the dark it came from, and the surface closes over it as if none of it ever happened. It is still down there tonight. So is the fish under the RC bird pool that broke a record and will likely break another. So are the ones nobody has hooked yet, the truly old ones, holding in the deep water below the bridges and the barges and the ordinary afternoons. We do not fully know why they keep getting bigger. We only know that the river has gone quiet and clean on the surface, that we cross it without looking, and that underneath us the largest of them are still there, still feeding, still growing, still waiting. If you like this video, YouTube also thinks you're going to like the one now on your screen.